The gavel crashes down as Judge Harrington's face contorts with rage, his voice booming across the silent courtroom. "Order! I will have order!" But 19-year-old Jamal Washington stands unflinching, holding up a phone displaying security, footage no one was supposed to see. The all-white jury gasps collectively. The prosecutor's confident smirk dissolves into panic. For 3 days, Detroit's criminal justice system tried to railroad another black teen to prison, but in this moment, the entire corrupt machine begins to crumble. What nobody knows, Jamal's battle has only begun. Before I continue with this shocking story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If you believe in justice for all, hit that like and subscribe button, because tomorrow's special episode will reveal how corrupt systems target innocent lives every day. Jamal Washington was exhausted but satisfied as he drove home from his late-night study session at Michigan State University. The pre-law student had been preparing for midterms, determined to maintain his perfect GPA. The clock on his dashboard read 2:17 a.m. as he carefully navigated through the upscale Bloomfield Hills suburb, taking a shortcut he rarely used. Red and blue lights suddenly flashed behind him, causing his heart to sink. Jamal checked his speedometer, 33 in a 35 zone. He pulled over promptly, placed both hands visibly on the steering wheel, and took a deep breath. Officer Richard Keller approached, flashlight beam aimed directly at Jamal's face. "License and registration," he barked, without explaining the reason for the stop. Jamal responded politely, asking what he had done wrong. "Suspicious behavior," Officer Keller replied curtly. "You don't look like you belong in this neighborhood." Jamal felt his chest tighten but kept his voice steady as he reached slowly for his glove compartment. "I'm a student at Michigan State, sir, just heading home from studying." The officer's expression hardened. "I smell marijuana coming from this vehicle." Jamal, who had never touched drugs in his life, felt panic rising, but maintained his composure. "There are no drugs in my car, officer. I respectfully decline consent to search my vehicle without probable cause." Officer Keller's face flushed with anger at this assertion of constitutional rights. Jamal discreetly pressed record on his phone as the officer radioed for backup. "Step out of the vehicle," Keller commanded, his hand moving to his holster. Jamal complied, still recording. The officer immediately grabbed him, slamming him face first against the car. Pain exploded across Jamal's cheek as the officer roughly handcuffed him. Through the car window, Jamal watched in horror as a second officer began searching his vehicle without consent. "Look what we have here," Officer Keller announced triumphantly minutes later, holding up a small bag of white powder. "Cocaine possession. That's a felony, son." Jamal stared in disbelief. "That's not mine. You planted that." The officer smirked, reaching into Jamal's pocket and removing his phone. With a few taps, Jamal's recording disappeared. "Resisting arrest and accusations against an officer. You're in serious trouble now." At the police station, Jamal was processed, photographed, and placed in a holding cell. His requests to call his parents were repeatedly denied for 14 hours. Meanwhile, his worried parents, Marcus and Tamara Washington, had begun frantically, calling hospitals and police stations after their always reliable son missed his nightly check-in. When they finally discovered his location, they were shocked by the bail amount. $250,000 for a first-time alleged offense. The family home would need to be mortgaged to secure his release. The public defender assigned to Jamal's case, a harried woman with bloodshot eyes, spent precisely 10 minutes reviewing his file before pushing a plea deal across the table. 6 months probation if you plead guilty now. Fight it, and they'll push for maximum penalties. 5 to 7 years. She barely made eye contact. "But I'm innocent," Jamal insisted. "They planted evidence. The officer deleted my recording." The defender sighed. "Your word against a decorated officer. Look, take the deal. They're going to make an example out of you if you fight this." Jamal straightened his shoulders, his resolve hardening. "No. Deal. I won't plead guilty to something I didn't do." As the guard led him back to the holding cell, the public defender's parting words echoed in his mind. "Your funeral, kid. The system isn't designed for people like you to win." The Washington family home once a symbol of middle-class achievement in their integrated neighborhood, now felt like a fortress under siege. 2 days after his arrest, Jamal stepped through the front door, his parents having mortgaged their home of 23 years to secure his bail. The familiar scent of his mother's lavender candles did little to ease the knot in his stomach. Within hours, the whispers began. Mrs. Calloway, who had brought them cookies every Christmas for a decade, hurriedly ushered her grandchildren inside when Jamal waved from across the street. Mr. Baskins, his father's longtime carpool buddy, suddenly found alternate transportation to their shared workplace. Jamal's phone buzzed with a university email that made his blood run cold. Effective immediately. You are placed on academic suspension pending the outcome of criminal proceedings against you. His pre-law program, the future he had worked tirelessly to build, was slipping away. Desperate, Jamal called Professor Winters, his mentor and strongest advocate in the program. The call went to voicemail. He tried 3 more times over 2 days. Nothing. On the 3rd day, a terse email arrived. I cannot discuss your situation during ongoing legal proceedings. Please direct inquiries to the Dean's office. Abandoned by his mentor, Jamal turned to research, the skill that had earned him a full scholarship. After hours online at the public library, he uncovered a disturbing pattern. Officer Richard Keller had 12 separate complaints of targeting black drivers in wealthy neighborhoods over the past 3 years. None had resulted in disciplinary action. That evening, Jamal's father returned home ashen-faced, clutching a printout of the local news website. Son, they're crucifying you. The headline blared, MSU scholarship student caught dealing drugs in upscale neighborhood. Beneath it, Jamal's mugshot stared back, his eyes wide with the shock he had felt during processing. The article mentioned nothing about his dean's list status, his community service, or his spotless prior record. That night, the first threatening call came. Get your drug-dealing son out of our neighborhood before something happens to him. His mother's hands trembled as she hung up the phone. By morning, their family car bore the evidence of neighborhood justice, racial slurs scraped into the paint with a key. 2 days later, Tamara Washington received a tearful call from Jamal's 15-year-old sister Zora's school. Other students had cornered her in the bathroom, taunting her as the criminal's sister and suggesting she probably sold drugs too. Searching for any advantage in his case, Jamal discovered something that turned his stomach. Judge William Harrington, assigned to his case, regularly played golf with Officer Keller at the Bloomfield Country Club. A photo on the club's website showed them grinning together at a charity tournament 3 weeks earlier. Desperate, Jamal scheduled consultations with 3 different criminal defense attorneys. Each meeting followed the same pattern, initial interest that cooled the moment they reviewed his case details. The 3rd attorney was at least honest about it. With your record now, who'd believe you over a decorated officer? Besides, going against Harrington is career suicide for lawyers in this district. He has a long memory. Jamal's response was quiet but firm. So does injustice. Alone in his childhood bedroom that night, surrounded by academic trophies that suddenly seemed to mock him, Jamal made a decision. If no one would fight for him, he would fight for himself. He began meticulously researching case law, learning procedure, studying every aspect of criminal defense. His laptop became his law school, his case his only focus. 2 critical discoveries gave him hope. The Bloomfield Hills Police Department had received federal funding for body cams, which Officer Keller should have been wearing during the arrest. And second, a traffic camera at the intersection where he was pulled over might have captured the encounter. As Jamal worked through his 3rd sleepless night, he noticed headlights outside, illuminating his bedroom wall. A police cruiser, unmarked, but recognizable, idled across the street. It returned the next night and the next. The message was clear. We're watching you. The system expected Jamal Washington to break, to accept his assigned role as another black statistic in the criminal justice system. They had no idea who they were up against. Can you believe what Jamal's community did to him and his family? Comment number 1 if you think it's shameful how quickly neighbors turned against them based on just an accusation. And if you've ever witnessed how differently people are treated in the justice system, based on race, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to follow Jamal's journey because in our next part, you'll see just how biased the courtroom becomes. Would you have the courage to stand up to a system designed to break you down? Let's find out what happens when Jamal faces a judge who's already decided his fate. The Eastern District Courthouse of Michigan loomed before Jamal like a fortress designed to intimidate. Marble columns and imposing steps led to security checkpoints where guards eyed him suspiciously despite his carefully pressed shirt and tie. His public defender, Ms. Lowell, rushed through case details in a hurried whisper as they waited outside courtroom 7B. Judge Harrington has a full docket today. Don't speak unless directly addressed. Follow my lead. Jamal nodded, clutching his own carefully prepared notes. Inside, the courtroom fell to a hush as their case was called. Judge William Harrington, a man whose reputation preceded him, peered down from his bench. Statistical research had shown Harrington's troubling record, 87% conviction rate for black defendants compared to 43% for white defendants facing similar charges. What Jamal hadn't expected was the prosecutor, who rose confidently from her table. Catherine Mathers for the state, Your Honor. The ambitious district attorney rarely handled routine drug cases personally, preferring high-profile homicides that garnered media attention. Her presence signaled that Jamal's case had been designated for special attention. The proceedings began with Judge Harrington addressing all questions to Ms. Lowell rather than Jamal, as if he were invisible or incapable of comprehension. Does your client understand the severity of these charges? Lowell nodded, but Jamal noticed she barely made eye contact with the judge. Prosecutor Mathers painted a picture of Jamal that he barely recognized. The defendant, despite his privileged position as a scholarship student, has chosen to abuse that opportunity by dealing drugs to suburban youth. The state views this betrayal of community trust with particular concern. Jamal stiffened at the calculated mischaracterization, but remained silent as instructed. When Ms. Lowell filed routine motions to exclude the drug evidence based on Fourth Amendment violations, Judge Harrington denied them without consideration. The officer had reasonable suspicion to stop and probable cause to search. Motion denied. During a discussion of procedural timelines, Jamal noticed a clear misstatement of law. Unable to contain himself, he leaned forward. Your Honor, according to State v. Reynolds, the discovery timeline should be 20 days, not 10. The courtroom fell silent. Judge Harrington's face darkened as he leaned forward. Young man, one more inappropriate interruption and you'll be held in contempt. Your counsel speaks for you in my courtroom. As they exited for a brief recess, Jamal overheard a disturbing exchange in the hallway. Ms. Lowell stood just around the corner with Prosecutor Mathers, their voices low but clear. Let's find a quick resolution to this, Mathers was saying. Your client doesn't want this dragging through trial. Lowell's response was equally troubling. I'm working on him. He's stubborn, but reality will set in. That afternoon, Jamal made a decision that shocked the court. Your Honor, I respectfully request to represent myself in these proceedings. Judge Harrington's eyebrows shot up as murmurs rippled through the courtroom. You wish to proceed pro se, with no legal training. The judge's tone dripped with mockery. Mr. Washington, there's an old saying that a man who represents himself has a fool for a client. Jamal stood firm. Nevertheless, it is my constitutional right under Ferretta v. California. The judge's smile vanished. Very well, but be advised that you will receive no special treatment and will be held to the same standards as any attorney. The judge then imposed a nearly impossible deadline, 7 days to file all pretrial motions, when such filings typically took weeks to prepare. Jamal's first official act as his own attorney was to file detailed discovery requests. When the Asmaimai prosecutor's response arrived, it was obviously incomplete, with crucial documents accidentally omitted, including the police report and chain of custody for the alleged cocaine. When Jamal sought assistance from the local Black Lawyers Association, he was shocked to discover they had declined to help. A sympathetic receptionist whispered the truth over the phone. Judge Harrington's colleagues made calls. No one wants to cross him by helping you. That evening, researching local property records, Jamal discovered something disturbing. Judge Harrington had financial ties to Bloomrise Development, a company actively trying to buy up properties in Jamal's parents' historically black neighborhood for urban renewal. Cases like Jamal's, which painted the area as crime-ridden, served their narrative perfectly. Returning home exhausted from his research, a new shock awaited. An eviction notice had been taped to their door, claiming mortgage payments were 3 months behind. His father stood in the kitchen, bank receipts spread before him, on hold with the mortgage company for the 3rd hour. They claim they have no record of our payments despite these receipts. Someone was applying pressure from every possible angle. That night, Jamal's research led him to a curious pattern in similar cases. Officer Keller's arrests overwhelmingly led to plea deals rather than trials, often after defendants experienced a series of unfortunate events, job losses, housing issues, family problems, that wore down their resistance. The coordination suggested something beyond standard prosecution, perhaps illegal. Before falling into exhausted sleep at 3 a.m., Jamal made one final discovery. A small security camera on the front of Russell's gas station pointed directly at the spot where he'd been pulled over. If it had been working that night, it might have captured everything, including Officer Keller planting evidence. Tomorrow would begin his fight to access that footage before it was accidentally erased. Jamal's childhood bedroom had transformed into a makeshift legal office, with case law printouts taped to walls and stacked on every surface. Empty coffee cups testified to his 20-hour workdays as he prepared his defense with the determination of a man fighting for his life. Dark circles had formed under his eyes, his clothes hung looser on his frame, but his resolve only strengthened. The Washington family faced an onslaught from all sides. Marcus Washington returned home one evening, expression hollow as he placed his employee badge on the kitchen table. "They let me go today, restructuring, they called it." His voice cracked. 22 years with the company. My supervisor couldn't look me in the eye. Jamal's mother faced her own trials. A dedicated deacon at First Baptist for 18 years, Tamara arrived for Wednesday prayer meeting to find herself subtly excluded from conversations. Later, she overheard Sister Patricia, her friend of 15 years, whispering, "I heard her son was selling drugs to children. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree." The most heartbreaking blow came when 15-year-old Zora called from school, voice trembling. "3 girls cornered me in the locker room. They slapped me and said drug dealers' sisters deserve worse." When Tamara confronted the administration, the vice principal shrugged. "Without witnesses, there's nothing we can do." As bills mounted and legal costs drained their savings, the family discussed moving to Tamara's sister's house in Grand Rapids. "We can't afford it," Marcus concluded after reviewing their finances. "The bail money wiped us out, and we'd lose the house completely." On the 7th night after Jamal's court appearance, an unexpected ally emerged. Curtis Fleming, Jamal's white college roommate, showed up at their door. "I've been trying to reach you," he said. "I heard what happened. I don't believe it for a second." Curtis worked part-time at CompuFix, a tech repair shop. "Bring me your phone. If there's any trace of that deleted recording, I might recover." It's 2 days later, Curtis called with news. "I got fragments. The audio is mostly corrupted, but there's a 10-second video clip showing the officer approaching your car. It proves you were recording, which contradicts his report." A small victory, but not enough. The family's fragile hope shattered the next morning when Marcus discovered an envelope in their mailbox containing no return address. Inside, a typed note read, "Drop the case or your family will suffer worse consequences. This is your only warning." Jamal's research had yielded another disturbing pattern. Judge Harrington had thrown out evidence in 7 separate cases involving Officer Keller when defendants claimed evidence tampering despite compelling proof. Their connection ran deeper than casual golf games. That night, disaster struck. While the family attended a church counseling session, their home was broken into. The intruders took nothing except Jamal's laptop and legal files. The responding officers spent more time suggesting the family had staged the break-in than investigating. Over dinner that evening, The accumulated stress erupted. "Please, son," his mother pleaded, tears streaking her face. "Take the plea deal. We can't keep living like this." Marcus nodded in agreement. "They're too powerful, Jamal. This fight is destroying us all." Jamal slammed his fist on the table. "So I should confess to something I didn't do, accept a felony record that will follow me forever? Is that justice?" The argument escalated until Jamal grabbed his backpack and stormed out, spending the night on a friend's couch. Working from a public library computer the next day, Jamal uncovered 3 precedent cases where judges had thrown out evidence from officers with histories of misconduct. He also discovered something potentially game-changing. Russell's Gas station, directly across from where he'd been pulled over, had security cameras recording 24 hours a day. Rushing to the station, Jamal's hopes were dashed when the owner, Mr. Patel, refused to help. "I cannot afford trouble with police," he said, eyes darting nervously. "They come here every day. They review my business licenses. You understand?" Defeated, Jamal returned to his friend's apartment. At 11 that night, his phone rang, a blocked number. The voice was disguised. "I hear you're looking for evidence about Officer Keller. I might have something, but it'll cost you. $20,000. Jamal's heart raced. "I don't have that kind of money." The caller laughed. "Then I guess you're going to prison, kid." The line went dead. Jamal stared at the ceiling that night, wondering if the call had been a setup, a trap to catch him trying to bribe a witness. Sleep eluded him as the walls seemed to close in from all sides. Are you seeing how the system works against people like Jamal? Comment number 1 if you're outraged by how his entire family is being punished for simply fighting for justice. If you've ever witnessed institutional power being used to crush someone's spirit, hit that subscribe button right now. This story exposes the reality many face every day. With his family suffering and resources dwindling, where can Jamal possibly turn for help? And what would you do if powerful forces were conspiring to destroy your family just because you refused to accept injustice? Stay tuned to see if Jamal finds an unexpected ally in the next part of this shocking true story. The upscale coffee shop in Birmingham seemed an unlikely meeting place for Jamal, yet there he sat, nervously checking his watch. A text from an unknown number had directed him here with a cryptic message. "Someone who can help. 3 p.m. Come. Alone." At precisely 3, an elegant older white woman in a tailored suit approached his table. "Mr. Washington, I'm Martha Collins." Jamal recognized the name immediately. Judge Martha Collins had served on the circuit court bench for 27 years before her retirement last year. Her reputation for fairness was legendary among defense attorneys. "I've been following your case with interest," she said, sliding into the chair across from him. "Certain patterns caught my attention." Over the next hour, Judge Collins explained that she had been privately investigating Judge Harrington's sentencing disparities before her retirement. "What you're experiencing isn't random. It's systematic." She agreed to mentor Jamal on courtroom procedure and legal strategy, though she couldn't represent him directly. "Harrington would immediately recuse himself if I appeared as your counsel, and you might get someone worse." Meanwhile, Curtis had been working his own angle, hacking into the prosecutor's office network through a vulnerability he'd discovered. "They accessed your academic records without a warrant," he reported, showing Jamal screenshots of his confidential university files on Prosecutor Mather's internal system. "That's grounds for excluding anything they found." A small spark of public support began to flicker. The Detroit Justice Coalition, a community activist group, organized modest protests outside the courthouse with signs reading, "Free Jamal Washington" and "End Prosecutorial Misconduct." A reporter from the Detroit Guardian, Dana Mills, published a small piece questioning why a routine drug case had warranted personal attention from the district attorney. These developments coincided with Jamal's biggest breakthrough yet. Curtis had tracked down Mr. Patel's nephew, Raj, who worked night shifts at Russell's gas station. "My uncle won't help because he's scared," Raj explained. "But I made a copy of that night's security footage before anyone asked for it. I've seen how they treat people who look like you and me." The footage clearly showed Officer Keller's patrol car stopping Jamal without cause. More importantly, it captured the officer. approaching the passenger side of Jamal's car, while Jamal was handcuffed on the driver's side. Officer Keller's hand moved suspiciously near his pocket before discovering the drugs. The face wasn't perfectly clear, but the implication was damning. Judge Collins arranged a meeting with retired Internal Affairs investigator James Wilson, who had left the department after whistleblowing about corruption. Wilson examined the footage and agreed it showed likely evidence planting. "I can help authenticate this and testify about proper procedure," he offered. "Let me enhance the video quality first." What Jamal didn't know was that Wilson had already contacted Officer Keller the moment he left their meeting. "The kid has video," he reported in a late-night call. "Grainy but problematic. I'll get you the copy he gave me." The Washington family's fragile hope shattered at 2 a.m. when sirens jolted them awake. Flames engulfed their garage, spreading rapidly toward the house. They escaped with only the clothes they wore. Fire investigators ruled it possible electrical failure, despite Marcus's protests that he'd recently had the wiring inspected. The fire destroyed the remainder of Jamal's case materials stored in his bedroom. For the first time, the community's conscience stirred. Neighbors who had shunned them now offered temporary housing. Zora's classmates organized a clothing drive. The Detroit Guardian ran a front-page story questioning the suspicious timing of the fire. As the Washingtons moved into a motel room paid for by their church, Jamal received devastating news. Wilson had disappeared with the only copy of the high-E enhanced video evidence. His phone was disconnected, his apartment emptied. Prosecutor Mathers seized the moment of vulnerability, approaching Jamal directly after a preliminary hearing. The offer's still on the table, but improved. Plead to simple possession, not intent to distribute. 6 months probation, record eligible for sealing after 3 years. The Washington family, huddled in their cramped motel room that evening, begged Jamal to accept. "We've lost everything," his father said. "We can't keep fighting the entire system." Jamal nearly capitulated until a package arrived at Judge Collins' office addressed to him. Inside, a USB drive contained internal affairs complaints against the Bloomfield Hills Police Department, focusing specifically on Officer Keller. The anonymous sender had included a note. "Not everyone in the department supports this corruption." These were about to be accidentally shredded. The documents revealed 17 complaints of Officer Keller targeting black drivers in wealthy neighborhoods, with evidence suspiciously disappearing in each case before formal investigation. More significantly, they showed a pattern of coordinated harassment against anyone who filed complaints: job losses, evictions, car accidents, family problems. Dana Mills, the Guardian reporter, began connecting these dots. She interviewed former defendants who described similar experiences to Jamal's. Her preliminary research suggested a coordinated effort between certain officers, prosecutors, and judges to maintain racial boundaries in Bloomfield Hills and similar affluent suburbs. The system's response was swift. The day after Dana interviewed Jamal, her editor pulled her from the story. "Advertiser concerns," he explained vaguely. She continued investigating on her own time, feeding information to Jamal while carefully covering her tracks. As the preliminary hearing date approached, Jamal found himself in a desperate race against time. Wilson's betrayal had cost him his strongest evidence. The fire had destroyed his research and notes. His family teetered on the edge of breakdown, yet each new obstacle only strengthened his resolve to expose the corrupt system that had targeted him and countless others before him. The Eastern District Courthouse buzzed with unusual activity as Jamal's case drew increased attention. Dana Mills's initial article had sparked interest from larger media outlets, prompting Prosecutor Mathers to file an emergency motion. "Your Honor, the state moves to exclude any mention of Officer Keller's disciplinary history as prejudicial and irrelevant to the current proceedings." Judge Harrington barely glanced at Jamal's counter-argument before ruling. "Motion granted. The officer's personnel records have no bearing on this case." This devastating ruling eliminated Jamal's strategy of demonstrating a pattern of misconduct. Fighting back strategically, Jamal filed a detailed motion challenging the evidence chain of custody. The prosecution cannot establish continuous control, of the alleged cocaine from seizure to testing, he argued, citing 3 procedural violations documented in the belated discovery materials. As both sides prepared for trial, Dana published a carefully researched article questioning the unusual handling of Jamal's case. Washington versus the System, questions of equity in Bloomfield Hills policing ran below the fold in the Guardian's Sunday edition. The system's retaliation was immediate and personal. Somehow Jamal's sealed juvenile record, a minor trespassing incident at 14 when he'd taken a shortcut through a private golf course, was leaked to the media. Channel 7 News ran a special report titled, "The Making of a Criminal, Jamal Washington's Path from Juvenile Delinquent to Drug Dealer." The segment featured carefully selected yearbook photos that made him appear threatening, and interviews with community members who claimed to have always known he was trouble. A coordinated social media campaign portrayed Jamal as an ungrateful scholarship recipient who had betrayed the university's trust. Anonymous accounts posted manufactured stories of drug deals and threatening behavior. "I bought from him multiple times the Sucker Justice for Bloomfield," read one viral tweet from an account created 3 days earlier. Judge Collins received a late-night phone call that changed everything. "We know you're helping the Washington boy," the distorted voice stated. "Judges who can't stay retired often find their pensions reviewed." The next morning, she regretfully informed Jamal she could no longer assist him. "They know too much about our meetings. I'm sorry, Jamal. They're watching both of us now." Curtis discovered the extent of surveillance when he found his computer had been remotely accessed. "They got everything," he reported grimly. "All our research, case notes, everything. My security system logged an intrusion from a government IP address." Furious at Wilson's betrayal, Jamal confronted the former investigator at a diner, secretly recording the conversation on a device Curtis had verified was secure. "You sold me out," Jamal accused quietly. Wilson's expression shifted from denial to resignation. "You don't understand how this works, kid. This goes higher than you know. The real estate deals alone involve millions. Your little drug case is just a cog in the machine." The recording wasn't admissible in court, but it confirmed Jamal's suspicions about coordinated corruption. A sympathetic courthouse clerk, Mrs. Abernathy, who had watched the system grind down defendants for 30 years, risked her job by accidentally leaving Judge Harrington's calendar accessible while Jamal waited to file motions. The calendar revealed regular meetings between the judge, Prosecutor Mathers, and police union representatives, meetings that were never disclosed as required by judicial ethics rules. Dana prepared a comprehensive exposé based on this information and Wilson's recorded admission, only to have her editor kill the story entirely. "The publisher received a call from the mayor's office," he admitted. "This stops now, or the paper loses all city advertising contracts." As jury selection began, Prosecutor Mathers systematically excluded black potential jurors, using peremptory challenges to remove 7 consecutive black candidates. When Jamal raised Batson challenges, arguing this pattern showed racial discrimination, Judge Harrington dismissed his concerns. "The prosecutor has provided race-neutral reasons for each strike. Objections overruled." By day's end, an all-white jury had been seated, despite the district's 43% black population. The night before opening statements, Jamal sat alone in the motel room his family now called home, reviewing his notes one final time. A gentle knock at the door startled him. When he opened it, the hallway was empty, except for a manila envelope on the floor. Inside, a USB drive contained footage from a different security camera, this one from inside Russell's gas station, showing the parking lot from another angle. This new angle clearly captured Officer Keller removing something from his pocket and placing it in Jamal's car before discovering it. The footage had a clear timestamp and showed the officer's face without question. A note accompanied the drive. "Not all of us are corrupt. Use this wisely." For the first time in weeks, Jamal felt a glimmer of genuine hope. Do you think Jamal stands any chance against this coordinated system? Comment number 1 if you're shocked by how far the corruption goes. If this story is opening your eyes to how justice can be manipulated, hit that subscribe button right now. Notice how every time Jamal gains ground, the system strikes back. Harder, With jury selection stacked against him and powerful people working to destroy his reputation, what could possibly save him now? And would you have the courage to continue fighting when faced with such overwhelming opposition? The trial begins next, and you won't believe what happens when Jamal finally faces his accusers in court. The courtroom fell silent as Prosecutor Catherine Mathers rose for her opening statement, her crimson blazer drawing all eyes like a matador's cape. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, voice resonating with practiced conviction, "this case is about privilege and betrayal. The defendant, Jamal Washington, enjoyed opportunities many only dream of: a full scholarship to Michigan State, supportive parents, a community that invested in his future. Yet he chose to poison that same community by selling dangerous narcotics." Jamal watched the jury as Mathers painted him as an entitled criminal, noting how several nodded along. The evidence will prove beyond reasonable doubt that on April 18th, the defendant was apprehended with 28 grams of cocaine packaged for distribution, not personal use. Officer Richard Keller, a decorated 12-year veteran of the force, followed proper procedure in every aspect of this arrest. When Jamal's turn came, Judge Harrington's interruptions began immediately. "Objection. Assuming facts not in evidence," Mathers called out when Jamal mentioned the officer's approach to his vehicle. "Sustained," Harrington replied without hesitation. 3 more objections disrupted Jamal's carefully prepared opening statement, each sustained despite their questionable validity. By the time he concluded, the jury appeared confused and skeptical. Officer Keller took the stand, looking every inch the professional in his pressed uniform. He testified confidently about observing Jamal's suspicious behavior, driving slowly through an affluent neighborhood late at night, and developing probable cause upon detecting the odor of marijuana. When describing the discovery of cocaine, his account flowed smoothly, clearly rehearsed. During cross-examination, Jamal attempted to question Keller about his body cam, which department policy required. "The objection beyond the scope," Mathers interrupted. "Sustained," came the automatic response. When Jamal tried to introduce Keller's history of similar arrests, Judge Harrington shut him down immediately. "The court has already ruled on this matter, Mr. Washington. Move on." The crime lab technician, Sandra Morris, testified next about testing the substance found in Jamal's car, confirming it was cocaine with 98% purity. Her testimony seemed flawless until Jamal noticed a discrepancy in the documentation. "Ms. Morris, the evidence tag shows the sample was logged at 8:14 p.m., but your testing notes indicate analysis began at 7:55 p.m. How did you test the sample before it was logged into evidence?" Morris blinked rapidly. "That must be a clerical error." "A clerical error that violates chain of custody protocols?" Jamal pressed. "Tell me, does your lab often test evidence before officially receiving it?" Judge Harrington intervened. "The jury will disregard the defendant's characterization. Move along, Mr. Washington." Despite the judge's interference, several jurors were visibly troubled by the inconsistency. The prosecution's next witness blindsided Jamal completely. Tyler Reynolds, a fellow MSU student whom Jamal barely knew from a freshman political science class 3 years earlier, took the stand claiming to have purchased cocaine from Jamal at least 6 times. Jamal's objection that Reynolds had never been disclosed as a witness was overruled when Mathers claimed he was a rebuttal witness, added after recent developments. Tyler's testimony contradicted itself several times. He couldn't remember which dorm Jamal lived in or when their alleged transactions occurred. But the damage was done. The prosecution's parade of expert witnesses continued, each painting Jamal as a calculating drug dealer. A narcotics distribution expert testified that the quantity and packaging indicated intent to sell, not personal use, though he admitted on cross-examination he hadn't personally examined the evidence. An economist calculated the street value at nearly $4,000, creating the impression of significant criminal enterprise rather than a planted personal use amount. Throughout the proceedings, media coverage heavily favored the prosecution's narrative. Local news featured selected testimony each evening, always highlighting prosecution points while minimizing defense challenges. Courthouse protesters supporting Jamal were barely visible in coverage, while concerned citizens supporting the prosecution received ample screen time. As pressure mounted at the courthouse, it continued at home. Marcus Washington's new employer called him aside, explaining that concerned community members had contacted the company about employing the father of an accused drug dealer. "Maybe take some time off until this blows over," his supervisor suggested. In the courtroom, Jamal noticed disturbing patterns. The court reporter appeared to selectively transcribe proceedings, sometimes failing to record his objections entirely. The bailiff intimidated Jamal's supporters by requiring them to show ID multiple times, while prosecution supporters entered freely. Seating for the public was suddenly limited when Jamal's church group arrived to show support. During a lunch recess on the third day, Dana slipped Jamal a note. "Found evidence of Mather's misconduct in similar case 2 years ago. Meeting tonight?" But when Jamal returned to continue his cross-examination of a police witness, he discovered his carefully prepared exhibits had been misplaced by the court clerk. Judge Harrington denied his request for time to recreate them. That afternoon, while Jamal was in court, a certified letter arrived at the motel. Michigan State University formally expelled him based on their moral character clause, citing the overwhelming evidence presented at his ongoing trial. The prosecution's case appeared unstoppable, as Mathers confidently announced, "The state anticipates concluding its case tomorrow, Your Honor, significantly ahead of schedule." Judge Harrington smiled. "Excellent progress, Counselor." As Jamal left the courthouse that evening, Curtis waited in the parking lot with devastating news. "They're moving to discredit all your witnesses before they even testify. Someone from the prosecutor's office has been intimidating them all day." With the prosecution case nearly complete and his defense crumbling before it began, Jamal faced his darkest hour yet. Jamal's hands trembled slightly as he called his first character witness, Pastor Deacon Johnson from First Baptist, who had known him since childhood. The distinguished minister had promised compelling testimony about Jamal's character and community service. But as the elderly man took the stand, something had clearly changed. His normally commanding voice faltered as Prosecutor Mathers approached for cross-examination. "Pastor Johnson, isn't it true your church receives city funding for its community outreach programs?" she asked innocently. The implication hung in the air: support Jamal lose funding. The pastor's testimony weakened considerably, shifting from definitive character statements to vague platitudes about everyone deserving fair treatment. When Jamal attempted to introduce evidence about improper traffic stop procedure through his second witness, a retired police academy instructor, Judge Harrington, blocked it entirely. "The court has already ruled the stop was legal. This testimony is irrelevant and potentially misleading to the jury." The evening news painted a devastating picture. "Amateur lawyer failing spectacularly," read the chyron beneath footage of Jamal looking frustrated in court. Legal commentators questioned his decision to represent himself, suggesting it proved his poor judgment. Driving back to the motel in Curtis's car, the family still couldn't afford to replace their fire-damaged vehicle. Jamal noticed the steering felt strange. Pulling over, they discovered someone had partially cut the brake lines. When police responded, the officer dismissed it as probably unrelated vandalism, despite the timing and circumstances. "Lots of car vandalism in this area lately," he claimed, though Curtis found no such reports in recent police bulletins. The next morning, Curtis arrived with crucial information. Tyler Reynolds, the prosecution's star witness. He has his own cocaine possession case pending. They dropped charges the day after he agreed to testify against you. This explained Reynolds' sudden appearance and rehearsed testimony. When Jamal attempted to introduce this evidence of witness coercion, Judge Harrington blocked it, claiming it would confuse the jury with collateral matters. Outside the courthouse, a larger demonstration supporting Jamal met an aggressive police response. Officers in riot gear confined protesters to a designated area far from the courthouse steps, while media cameras captured the image of growing unrest. Desperate to humanize himself to the jury, Jamal called his 15-year-old sister Zora as a character witness. The teenager spoke eloquently about her brother's mentorship and academic guidance until Prosecutor Mathers began her cross-examination. "Is it true you were recently disciplined at school for fighting?" Mathers asked, knowing the context of Zora's bullying had been excluded. "And isn't it true your family has had financial problems requiring your brother to seek additional income?" The questions had nothing to do with Jamal's character, but painted a picture of family dysfunction. When Mathers began asking about the family's eviction and fire, clearly attempting to suggest financial desperation as motivation for drug dealing, Jamal stood abruptly. "Objection! This crosses every line of decency and relevance." Judge Harrington's gavel crashed down. "Mr. Washington, control yourself or face contempt charges. The witness will answer the prosecutor's questions." Zora left the stand in tears, having been forced to detail their family's suffering for public scrutiny. That afternoon, the court clerk discreetly passed the judge a note from an anonymous juror, expressing concern about the fairness of proceedings. Without sharing its contents, Harrington pocketed the note and continued as if nothing had happened. Dana published a limited story online about questionable evidence handling in Jamal's case, carefully framing it as procedural concerns rather than accusations. By evening, she had been suspended from her position at the newspaper, violating editorial policy by publishing unapproved content, the official notice read. As Jamal prepared for the next day's proceedings in the motel room that evening, his phone rang with a blocked number. "This is Eric from the police evidence room," a nervous voice whispered. "There's something you should know. Keller's body cam didn't malfunction that night. There's footage. He submitted it. Then someone checked it out and never returned it. I've been ordered to purge the records tomorrow morning." They arranged to meet at midnight behind a 24-hour grocery store. Jamal arrived early, positioning himself with clear sightlines in all directions. At 12:05, a man in a police department polo approached, looking nervously over his shoulder. "I could lose everything for this," he said, handing Jamal a thumb drive. "But my brother went through the same thing as you last year. Nobody helped him." As Eric hurried back to his car, 3 masked men emerged from behind a dumpster. Jamal turned to run, but another figure blocked his path. The beating was methodical and professional, focused on his torso to minimize visible injuries, but severe enough to leave him gasping on the asphalt. One attacker knelt beside him. "Next time it's your family, take the deal." They took his phone and the thumb drive before disappearing into the night. A passerby found Jamal 30 minutes later and called an ambulance. At the hospital, his injuries were documented: 3 cracked ribs, internal bruising, and a mild concussion. By morning, hospital records of his admission had mysteriously misfiled, with intake photos documenting his injuries nowhere to be found. Despite his condition, Judge Harrington denied Jamal's request for a postponement. "The court's schedule doesn't permit delays. You've chosen to represent yourself, Mr. Washington, and must deal with the consequences of events in your personal life." Prosecutor Mathers went further, suggesting to the jury that Jamal's injuries were self-inflicted for sympathy or the result of drug deals gone wrong. Struggling to stand without wincing, Jamal continued his defense. Each witness faced similar intimidation. Each evidence submission met procedural obstacles, each objection overruled. The systematic dismantling of his case continued with brutal efficiency. As Day 5 of the trial concluded, Jamal's last hope rested on testimony scheduled for the following day. Russell's gas station manager, Mr. Patel, who had finally agreed to authenticate the security footage showing Officer Keller planting evidence. But as Jamal checked his phone before sleep claimed him, a news alert appeared. Gas station manager hospitalized after serious car accident. The system had eliminated his final witness. Have you ever seen someone fight this hard against impossible odds? Comment number 1 if you're amazed by Jamal's resilience despite everything being stacked against him. If you believe our justice system needs serious reform, hit that like and subscribe button right now. The corruption in this case runs deeper than anyone imagined. With Jamal injured, his witnesses intimidated, and critical evidence disappearing, how can he possibly prevail? Would you have the strength to continue after being physically attacked for seeking justice? The turning point comes next, and what happens in the courtroom will leave you speechless. The courtroom fell silent as Jamal Washington entered on day 6 of the trial. Despite his attempts to hide his injuries, his labored breathing and careful movements told their own story. Several jurors exchanged concerned glances, noting his bruised face and the way he winced while sitting down. Judge Harrington cleared his throat. "Mr. Washington, are you prepared to continue your defense today?" Jamal nodded, arranging his notes with shaking hands. "Yes, Your Honor." With Mr. Patel hospitalized, Jamal had lost his key witness to authenticate the security footage. His carefully constructed defense was crumbling. As he called his next witness, an evidence technician from the police department, Curtis slipped into the courtroom and passed a note to Jamal's mother, who relayed it forward. "Emergency. Check your email, now." Jamal requested a brief recess, which Judge Harrington reluctantly granted. In a courthouse bathroom stall, Jamal accessed his email on Curtis's laptop. What he found stunned him. Curtis had managed to recover deleted data from the evidence room technician's work email, showing correspondence about Officer Keller's body cam. Officer K's cam footage from Washington arrest, showing chain of custody issues. Delete from server after chief reviews. A second email added, chain of custody documentation should reflect equipment malfunction, standard procedure. Armed with this new information, Jamal returned to court with renewed purpose. The evidence technician, Barry Lewis, took the stand looking uncomfortable. Jamal methodically established Lewis's role and responsibilities before springing his trap. "Mr. Lewis, is it standard procedure to delete body cam footage after it's been submitted as evidence?" Lewis shifted in his seat. "No, that would violate department policy." Jamal displayed the recovered email on the courtroom monitor. "Can you explain this directive regarding Officer Keller's body cam footage from my arrest?" Lewis's face drained. Of color, Prosecutor Mathers erupted from her seat. "Objection! This document wasn't provided in discovery." "Because your office never disclosed its existence," Jamal countered calmly. "Brady v. Maryland requires disclosure of all exculpatory evidence." Judge Harrington, visibly shaken, called both parties to the bench. After heated whispers, he allowed the questioning to continue with the jury dismissed. Back on the stand, Lewis grew increasingly nervous as Jamal pressed him about evidence handling procedures. Finally, after 20 minutes of careful questioning about specific procedures documented in the department manual, Lewis broke. "Look, I just do what I'm told. If they say equipment malfunctioned, I write equipment malfunctioned." A collective gasp filled the courtroom. Judge Harrington immediately called an extended recess, practically running to his chambers where raised voices could be heard through the door. Prosecutor Mathers, police representatives, and the judge engaged in heated discussion for over an hour. When court reconvened, Mathers approached Jamal with an unexpected offer. "All charges dropped if you sign this non-disclosure agreement regarding police procedures and evidence handling." The document would prevent Jamal from ever discussing the case publicly or pursuing civil action against the department. "Not a chance," Jamal replied without hesitation. "This isn't just about me anymore." Returned to the courtroom, the momentum had visibly shifted. Curtis worked through the night, hacking into Officer Keller's personal cloud storage, where he discovered a disturbing collection. Photos of black arrestees organized by neighborhood, labeled with slurs, shared with a private group of officers. The metadata on these photos contradicted Keller's sworn testimony about his locations and activities on multiple occasions, including the night of Jamal's arrest. Meanwhile, Dana published a comprehensive exposé through an independent news site, having been fired from The Guardian for insubordination. Her article, System of Injustice, the Framing of Jamal Washington, detailed the connections between Judge Harrington, Prosecutor Mathers, and the Bloomfield Hills Police Department. The article went viral nationally, with major networks picking up the story. By morning, the courthouse was surrounded by media vans and protesters demanding justice. The pressure finally forced Internal Affairs to launch an official investigation, announcing it at a hasty press conference. Journalists bombarded Judge Harrington with questions about his impartiality as he entered the courthouse through a back entrance. Inside the courtroom, Prosecutor Mathers attempted damage control. Your Honor, in light of new information and in the interest of justice, the state moves to dismiss all charges against Mr. Washington. Jamal rose immediately. Objection, Your Honor. I respectfully request these proceedings continue to their conclusion to fully expose the truth on public record. Harrington appeared stunned by this unexpected resistance to dismissal. Before he could rule, the court clerk approached with another note from the jury. The judge read it with widening eyes. Your Honor, Jamal continued, I have reason to believe jurors are being subjected to outside pressure. This morning, juror number 8 found this on her windshield. He presented a photograph of a note reading, "We know where your children go to school." The courthouse clerk had provided Jamal with evidence of systematic jury tampering. 3 jurors had reported similar threats, but Judge Harrington had suppressed their complaints. The judge's composure finally cracked. This court will take a 1-hour recess while I consider these serious allegations. In his chambers, Harrington made frantic phone calls, eventually emerging to grant Jamal's emergency motion for a mistrial, based on jury tampering. However, his relief was visible as he added, "The court notes that prosecutorial discretion remains with the state. If they choose not to retry this case, the charges effectively end here." Jamal understood the implied threat. They would find a way to bury the evidence and prevent public exposure if the case concluded now. Despite the mistrial, Prosecutor Mathers announced on the courthouse steps that her office would review the evidence before determining next steps, effectively keeping the threat of prosecution alive while they regrouped. That evening, as the Washington family celebrated this partial victory, Jamal received a call from the court administrator. "Judge William Stone has been assigned to your case if the prosecution proceeds, scheduling conference set for Monday." The system wasn't surrendering, yet they were simply changing tactics. The reassignment of Jamal's case to Judge William Stone initially appeared to be a positive development. The 62-year-old jurist had a reputation for impartiality, lacking in Judge Harrington's courtroom. Similarly encouraging was Prosecutor Mathers' office recusing itself, citing appearance of conflict concerns, with the State Attorney General assigning Special Prosecutor Thomas Reed to handle any retrial. Media coverage shifted dramatically, with national outlets picking up the story. "Brave student stands against corruption," read the CNN Chiron. The Washington Post ran an investigative piece titled "Pattern of Injustice: How Traffic Stops Target Black Drivers in Affluent Suburbs." This wave of positive publicity lasted exactly 6 days. On the 7th morning, Marcus Washington opened their front door to find an eviction notice taped beside it. Despite bank statements proving their mortgage payments had been made on time, Bloomfield County Financial had somehow foreclosed on their home of 23 years. The paperwork claimed they were 6 months behind on payments, contradicting their receipts and bank records. When Marcus attempted to access their accounts to prove payment, he discovered all family banking accounts had been frozen due to an investigation of potential fraud. The banking freeze prevented them from hiring an attorney to fight the eviction. Zora was removed from school the following day. Residency issues, the administration claimed, citing the family's eviction and technical non-residency in the school district. Appearing before Judge Stone for the first time, Jamal initially felt cautiously optimistic. The judge's demeanor seemed more professional than Harrington's obvious bias. This hope evaporated when Judge Stone casually mentioned his previous role as legal counsel to the Police Officers Association of Michigan. The connection wasn't just professional. Stone had actively defended officers accused of misconduct, including writing amicus briefs supporting qualified immunity in excessive force cases. The system's coordinated response continued as Special Prosecutor Reed announced the discovery of additional evidence, text messages allegedly showing Jamal arranging drug deals with multiple students. Jamal immediately recognized the messages as fabricated. They referenced events and people he didn't know and contained slang he never used. When he demanded forensic analysis of the phone that supposedly received these messages, the prosecutor claimed the device had been accidentally damaged during processing. Curtis, whose technical expertise had been crucial to Jamal's defense, suddenly faced his own legal troubles. Campus police arrested him for unauthorized access of university computer systems, directly related to his assistance accessing Jamal's academic records after the prosecutor improperly obtained them. His bail was set at $50,000. Beyond his family's means, Dana's investigative work cost her even more. Police raided her apartment with a warrant for possession of stolen government documents. They seized her computer, notes, and research materials, effectively shutting down her reporting. Behind the scenes, the State Bar Association filed ethics complaints against retired Judge Collins for assisting Jamal, claiming she had undermined judicial integrity by helping a defendant challenge a sitting judge. The Police Officers Association organized a support rally for Officer Keller, portraying him as a dedicated public servant being persecuted for doing his job. Over 500 officers from surrounding jurisdictions attended, creating powerful visuals on evening news broadcasts. Political pressure mounted as the governor's office contacted the state attorney general, expressing concerns about the unrest created by this ongoing situation and suggesting it should be resolved quietly and expeditiously. The attorney general got the message. Find a way to make this disappear without admitting wrongdoing. The body cam footage that Eric from the evidence room had mentioned became officially unavailable after a small fire damaged the evidence storage room. Though only a few boxes were affected, they happened to include all materials related to Jamal's case. Facing complete financial ruin and mounting pressure, the Washington family approached their breaking point. Social services began investigating whether 15-year-old Zora should be placed with relatives, citing the family's unstable housing situation. As Jamal watched his family disintegrate under the system's coordinated attack, he considered abandoning the fight. "Maybe I should just take whatever deal they offer," he confessed to his parents one evening in their motel room. "This isn't worth destroying our entire family." Before they could respond, a knock at the door revealed an unexpected visitor, Anthony Howard, lead counsel for the National Civil Rights Defense Coalition. "We've been following your case," Howard explained. "Our organization wants to provide full legal representation and financial support for your family during this process." The NCRDC's involvement changed the dynamic immediately. With their resources and national profile, the case attracted even more media attention. Howard's team of experienced civil rights attorneys filed emergency motions addressing the family's banking freeze, eviction, and Curtis's criminal charges. City leadership, previously unified against Jamal, began showing cracks. The police chief held a press conference defending the department's actions, but multiple officers anonymously contacted the NCRDC offering testimony about systematic racial profiling in traffic stops. The city council called an emergency closed-door meeting, with heated arguments heard through the supposedly soundproofed doors. The system's most desperate countermeasure came in the form of multiple civil lawsuits. Officer Keller sued Jamal for defamation. Prosecutor Mathers filed suit for malicious prosecution based on Jamal's ethics complaints. Even Judge Harrington joined in, claiming Jamal had impugned his judicial integrity with baseless accusations. Each lawsuit demanded millions in damages, a transparent attempt to force Jamal to sign non-disclosure agreements to make the civil cases disappear. Howard's team responded by filing a comprehensive federal civil rights lawsuit that named the entire chain of command, exposing the coordinated effort to frame Jamal and suppress evidence. As one system door closed, another opened. The pressure had merely shifted to a new battlefield. The evidentiary hearing before newly appointed federal judge Rebecca Martinez represented Jamal's last meaningful chance at justice. The NCRDC legal team flanked him at the defense table, but Jamal had insisted on leading his own defense, having earned their respect through his previous efforts. "Nobody understands this case better than you do," Anthony Howard acknowledged. "We're here for support, but this is your story to tell." The prosecution arrived with 7 attorneys and 4 police department representatives. Their strategy was clear: overwhelm the defense with procedural objections and technical arguments to prevent the full story from emerging. Judge Martinez began by establishing ground rules. This hearing will determine whether key evidence was improperly excluded or fabricated. Mr. Washington has made serious allegations against the prosecution and police department that merit thorough examination. The first significant victory came when Mr. Patel, now recovered from his accident, finally agreed to testify about the gas station surveillance footage. The original video clearly showed the police officer placing something in the car before claiming to find it. He stated nervously, "I was afraid to come forward before. They threatened my business licenses." The night before Patel's scheduled testimony, he had been hospitalized after a van forced his car off the road, an accident with no witnesses. Though physically present in court, his fear was palpable as police officers stared him down from the gallery. Curtis, released on bail funded by the NCRDC, had completed recovery of Jamal's original phone video. Though fragments were missing, the restored footage clearly showed Officer Keller approaching Jamal's car without cause, contradicting his sworn testimony about observing suspicious behavior before initiating the stop. Judge Martinez ruled the video admissible over prosecution objections, noting that its deletion by Officer Keller constituted tampering with evidence. When the prosecution moved to exclude the gas station surveillance footage due to chain of custody concerns, Jamal brilliantly introduced it through an alternate legal mechanism, as impeachment evidence contradicting Officer Keller's sworn testimony, rather than as direct evidence of innocence. Former Officer Michael Randall, recently retired from the Bloomfield Hills Police Department, provided damning testimony about departmental practices. There was an unofficial quota for stops. In certain neighborhoods, he revealed, officers were expected to maintain what they called boundary enforcement in affluent areas, particularly targeting drivers who didn't belong. The State Attorney General's office, now fully aware of the national spotlight on the case, announced a limited investigation into the Bloomfield Hills Police Department's traffic stop practices. The dam truly broke during Officer Keller's cross-examination. Confronted with the contradictions between his testimony and the video evidence, his composure cracked. While arguing with Jamal about the sequence of events, he was caught on a hot microphone muttering to another officer, "Someone needs to shut Washington up permanently." The threat, broadcast through the courtroom speakers, caused Judge Martinez to immediately order the officer into custody for threatening a defendant. That evening, as Jamal left the courthouse surrounded by supporters, a car accelerated suddenly toward their group. Curtis shoved Jamal aside, taking the impact himself. Though the car sped away without identification, the attempted assault was captured by news cameras, dramatically illustrating the desperation of those trying to silence Jamal. Curtis survived, with a broken leg and concussion, becoming a powerful symbol of the case's significance. The assassination attempt transformed public opinion entirely. Massive protests erupted outside the courthouse and police headquarters, demanding accountability at all levels. Federal authorities announced their involvement, with the Justice Department launching a pattern or practice investigation into systematic civil rights violations. Judge Martinez, responding to overwhelming evidence and public pressure, made a series of rulings that devastated the prosecution's case. The surveillance footage was admitted in full. Officer Keller's history of targeting black drivers became admissible. The fabricated text messages were excluded as evidence. The investigation expanded beyond Jamal's case, with multiple defendants, previously convicted, based on Officer Keller's testimony coming forward with similar stories of evidence planting and intimidation. Officer Keller was charged with evidence tampering in multiple cases, including Jamal's. Judge Harrington abruptly announced his retirement for health reasons as judicial ethics investigators closed in. Catherine Mathers withdrew from legal practice pending investigation by the State Bar, and the police chief resigned amid the widening scandal. Despite these victories, the system made one final attempt to save face. The prosecutor offered to reduce charges to simple possession with time served, allowing them to still claim some justification for the original arrest. "This way, everyone wins," the new prosecutor suggested. "You go free. We avoid admitting complete fabrication of charges." Jamal refused. "There's only one acceptable outcome," he stated firmly. complete dismissal with prejudice, and a formal acknowledgement that this case was a miscarriage of justice from beginning to end. The final court date was set, with the entire country watching to see if the system would fully acknowledge its failure or find one last way to avoid complete accountability. The Eastern District Federal Courthouse had never seen such a crowd. Hundreds gathered on the steps, holding signs supporting Jamal and demanding justice reform. National media lined the street, broadcasting live as Jamal arrived with his family and legal team. Inside, the courtroom fell silent as Judge Rebecca Martinez entered, followed by an unexpected presence, Federal Judge Elaine Thomas from the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, who had requested special permission to address the court. "The federal government has a compelling interest in this proceeding," Judge Thomas explained. "We have reviewed the evidence thoroughly and found disturbing patterns of constitutional violations, evidence tampering, and coordinated efforts to deprive Mr. Washington of his civil rights." In a stunning development, Judge Thomas announced that remaining state charges would be dismissed with prejudice under federal authority, citing irreparable harm to the integrity of the justice process. She further stated that the Department of Justice was launching a comprehensive pattern or practice investigation into the Bloomfield Hills Police Department, the prosecutor's office, and the local judiciary. Richard Keller, no longer addressed, as officer, was led into court in handcuffs to face multiple felony charges, including evidence tampering, perjury, and civil rights violations. The investigation had expanded to include 8 other officers involved in similar cases. Catherine Mathers and 4 assistant prosecutors faced disbarment proceedings and potential criminal charges for deliberate misconduct. 3 judges, including Harrington, were under investigation for biased sentencing patterns and improper coordination with prosecutors in cases involving minority defendants. Judge Martinez formally expunged Jamal's arrest record, ordering all digital and physical copies destroyed. "Mr. Washington, on behalf of the judicial system that has failed you so profoundly, I offer a formal apology," she stated. "What happened to you represents the worst of our justice system. Your courage in fighting this injustice has exposed systemic problems that have victimized countless others." Michigan State University. President Dr. Elaine Chen personally attended the hearing to announce Jamal's reinstatement with a full scholarship and public apology. "Mr. Washington exemplifies the character and determination we should celebrate in our students, not punish," she acknowledged. The City Council and Police Department, facing multiple federal civil rights investigations, offered a significant financial settlement to the Washington family for the violations they suffered. Jamal accepted on one condition, that a portion fund a legal defense foundation for similar cases. The Jamal Washington Legal Defense Fund will ensure that others facing systemic injustice won't stand alone, he announced on the courthouse steps. The changes rippled outward. Judge Martha Collins was not only reinstated, but appointed to lead a new judicial ethics committee tasked with identifying and addressing bias in the courts. Dana Mills received a National Journalism Award for her coverage of the case, despite institutional pressure. She used the platform to launch an independent investigative news site focused on justice system accountability. Curtis Fleming's criminal charges were dismissed, and his innovative work led to the development of a police accountability app that went nationwide, allowing citizens to securely record and preserve evidence of misconduct. The Washington family transformed their ordeal into purpose. Marcus and Tamara became community organizers, running workshops on knowing your rights during police encounters and supporting families of those unjustly accused. Zora, despite her young age, spoke at schools about standing against injustice and supporting family members through crisis. The White House invited Jamal to discuss his experience and recommendations for criminal justice reform, leading to federal legislation addressing racial disparities in policing and prosecution. The Washington Justice Act included mandatory body cam requirements, independent prosecution of police misconduct cases, and judicial oversight reforms. Locally, the Bloomfield Hills Police Department underwent comprehensive restructuring. A civilian oversight board with actual disciplinary authority was established, with Jamal appointed as its youngest member. Mandatory bias training, community, engagement requirements, and transparent complaint processes replaced the previous culture of impunity. Most significantly, Jamal's case sparked a re-examination of similar convictions nationwide. Dozens of cases involving officers with misconduct patterns or judges with racial sentencing disparities received new scrutiny, leading to multiple exonerations. Returning to Michigan State the following semester, Jamal entered the law school that had once expelled him, now welcomed as a symbol of persistence and justice. His experiences shaped his focus on civil rights law and criminal justice reform. "Systems don't change unless they're forced to," Jamal told the incoming law school class during orientation. "But when enough people stand firm in the face of injustice, even the most entrenched corruption can be exposed and defeated." The legal textbooks used by those same students now included Washington versus Michigan as a landmark case on evidence tampering, prosecutorial misconduct, and the right to self-representation. The system that had tried to destroy Jamal Washington had instead created its most effective reformer, someone who understood its flaws from the inside and possessed both the legal knowledge and moral authority to transform it. As Jamal often said in the speaking engagements that now filled his calendar, "Justice isn't guaranteed by the system. It's guaranteed by those willing to fight when the system fails." Jamal Washington's story reveals powerful truths about our justice system. First, systemic racism doesn't just exist in obvious forms. It's embedded within institutions, creating coordinated obstacles for people of color. Second, constitutional. Rights mean nothing without the courage to defend them against overwhelming pressure. Third, corruption thrives in darkness. When exposed to public scrutiny, even the most entrenched systems begin to crack. Fourth, individual courage can inspire collective action. Jamal's refusal to accept injustice eventually mobilized an entire community and nation. Fifth, true justice requires both personal resilience and strategic alliances. Jamal's legal knowledge, combined with supporters who believed in him, created unstoppable momentum. Sixth, systems resist change through escalating tactics from minor harassment to life-threatening violence, revealing their true nature when challenged. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, meaningful reform happens not through theoretical discussions, but through the painful, persistent efforts of those directly harmed by injustice. Jamal's transformation from victim to advocate reminds us that the most effective change agents are forged in the fires of personal struggle, emerging with both the scars and wisdom necessary to rebuild broken systems. Has Jamal's fight for justice inspired you? Would you have the same courage to stand against a system designed to break you? Comment below about a time when you witnessed or experienced injustice and how you responded. If you believe our justice system needs urgent reform to address racial bias, hit that like button and subscribe to support more stories that expose these hidden realities. Share this with someone who needs to understand what many Americans face every day in our courts. Thank you for joining us on this powerful journey through Jamal's experience. Remember, justice isn't guaranteed by institutions. It's won by those brave enough to demand it when those institutions fail.